Tech Lyceum, a podcast by Birlasoft.
Generative AI. Let's talk about it today. My name is Neerja and this is Tech Lyceum. Now, as we all know, generative AI is one of the buzzwords heard everywhere these days, seems to be there in multiple discussions, and there are multiple ways of looking at this technology. So let's demystify this tech jargon and really understand what it means, get to the bottom of it. We have somebody to help us with that. Ajit Singh Chawla joins us, Senior Vice President, Global Head of the Digital Business Unit at Birlasoft, with nearly 20 plus years of experience in the technology space. Ajit has been a driving force for many accomplishments and projects. Hi, Ajit. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Neerja. Thank you for having me.
So, Ajit, everyone's talking about generative AI. It is a distinctive and revolutionary macro-scale tech that can potentially change everything, right? And every organization is racing to be a part of this revolution. There's a lot of hype around it. What is your take on this?
Thank you for this question, Neerja. And I've been asked this question a lot of times by our customers as well. Generative AI is a once-in-a-generation technology. And as with any new tech, it's natural to have its share of excitement, confusion, as well as fear. Okay, and that's what we see, across the board now. But at the same time, it has established its credentials enough to be seen as a real force for productivity, experience, and operational gains. And that's what that's how it's revolutionizing different sectors and functions. So as we start looking at how do we plan for generative AI adoption, I think it's super critical to have a sustainable strategy, which is, manageable from a long run perspective, but at the same time, dynamic enough, to deal with rapid developments as they are happening on a day-to-day basis, because the technology itself is also emerging on a day-to-day basis, right? And as I meet some customers, oftentimes, my advice to them is that do not look at this as just a technology, but as an opportunity for a 360-degree transformation. And therefore, what's super critical, again, is to have the organization readiness as the number one, lever to consider when you look for generative AI adoption. And by organization readiness, it's about people, it's about processes, and it's about technology. And technology, I'm purposely putting at the end because people and processes have to be ready to adopt that technology. And that's the larger organization change management that the customers need to look into. The second aspect that's also important to look into is the larger data strategy, because at the end of the day, whatever generative AI produces, it's important to have the downstream data strategy that's, ensuring that the outcome is reliable. So that data strategy in terms of quality, in terms of data pipeline, etc., is the other very, very important aspect. And the third aspect is, let's not get carried away because, we can only sound relevant if when we're talking about generative AI. Not everything requires generative AI. So let's look at the problems with an open mind. Let's look at what is the right solution for the problem. And then if generative AI is one, then let's look at the cost benefit analysis and many other factors, and then decide if or not to leverage generative AI for that. So those three aspects, right? Organization readiness, a robust data strategy, and a robust problem analysis and assessment are important aspects to consider while, going for any such program.
Right, Ajit. Thank you for taking us through that. Lots of moving parts there. And we also keep hearing that generative AI is going to change the world as we know it, right from pushing the boundaries of creativity and productivity to augmented human-machine partnerships. I mean, that day that we grew up only seeing in movies is now fast approaching in reality. What do you think are the key areas of impact? What do you visualize?
See, from my study, and I've been studying both a lot of consulting organizations like of McKinsey, Deloitte, BCG, etc. Some of their reports, as well as how our customers are starting to adopt generative AI. There are two macro themes that emerge out in terms of areas of impact. Number one is cost-driven, which is essentially productivity, efficiency, operational excellence, etc. And the second theme is growth driven, which is sales and marketing, R&D, engineering, and customer experience, if you may, right? In the early days, as one would expect, most of the adoption is driven on cost related themes. But as the technology would stabilize and as people will learn more about it, I do expect it to pivot towards some of the growth themes as well. And some customers have already started doing some pilots. One of the McKinsey studies that I recently looked into actually anticipates that about 75% of the value that generative AI use cases would deliver will actually fall into customer operations, sales, marketing, engineering, and R&D. And I kind of resonate with that. But still, as I mentioned earlier, the early part of the adoption, I see the impact is largely going to be on cost-driven use cases, the likes of productivity, efficiencies, and operational improvements that I spoke about.
The AI revolution has also brought in a set of risks that organizations are still dealing with. What are the potential risks associated with generative AI, Ajit, and how can organizations mitigate these risks in this, race for trust?
See, I would classify the risks in two key categories, right? One is the technology associated or technology induced risks, aspects such as privacy and security, managing hallucinations and biases, transparency and traceability of the results, intellectual property ownerships, and equal access, right? And these are very important risks to mitigate. They were, as it is important in the larger world of artificial intelligence, but with generative AI and the speed of adoption there, super important for any organization to have a clear risk management strategy in their adoption of generative AI. But there is an equally critical risk, which is about people. And when I talk about people, it's about people management and also expectation management. Because as I said earlier, right, generative AI has the potential to actually disrupt and transform an organization. And the core to any organization and the key to success for any such transformative initiative for any organization is managing the people and managing their expectations for good and for bad, right? So that's a very important risk for any organization to manage. So the way we advise our customers and partners to look into is, first and foremost, they must start a risk management strategy right at the very beginning as they start looking into adoption of generative AI. They must work with the different partners, whether they are hyperscaler partners, technology partners, and so on, to look at their security, the privacy guardrails, etc., that are in play. They must also look at their enterprise data as well, because a lot of them have started to build custom generative AI models on their enterprise data. So therefore, it's important to look at the security posture in their data pipelines, and so on and so forth. And then on the people side, they must start investing upfront on proper upskilling of people, workforce planning, the change management initiatives, the right communication, the right messaging to the people that this is not necessarily going to take their jobs away, but will give them an opportunity to actually leverage their skills on more value-driven initiatives and be more valuable to their customers and their businesses. So that investment on people and management is also important as much as it is on the other areas of risk management.
Right. Many things to consider in risk management when it comes to generative AI. As organizations across the globe gear up to put generative AI front and center in their approach, Ajit, there are two areas of concern. One is, how can they differentiate themselves in this race? And the second is, how do organizations at varying stages of adoption unlock value from generative AI?
I recently read a report from Deloitte, and I quite liked the way they had summarized it, that the competitive advantage for any organization looking at adopting Gen AI will be driven by two factors or two primary factors. A, by access to the proprietary data sets, and how well the data ecosystem and data pipeline is defined. And second is the access to the right talent. And, I do believe that the latter is practically going to be a showstopper for organizations in their transformation journey. So talent clearly is a very important aspect that's going to drive competitive advantage for our organizations. So as organizations start their journey for unlocking the potential from generative AI, as I mentioned earlier, they need to have a sustainable and an inclusive strategy that they need to start embarking on. They need to look at how they can drive collaborations across cross-disciplinary teams so that it's inclusive. That will include their IT team, their people HR team, their product teams, and so on and so forth. And it's important to start laying out a clear technology strategy, including data engineering and data pipelines, ML ops, the AI-ready talent, and all of that. Because the more inclusive they are and the more integrated they are from the very beginning, I think the chances of them succeeding in this journey are going to be that much higher.
Ajit, as we wrap up, I just want to ask you, amidst all the generative AI hype, organizations need to identify a partner of choice to support them in this journey. So could you tell us about how Birlasoft engages with customers on this?
Well, the first thing I tell our customers is that we don't have all the answers. Okay. We don't profess to know everything because quite frankly, nobody does yet. And therefore, it is very important to have a grounded approach as we embark on this journey. And we help our customers determine, some of the quick wins that allow them to understand both the potential of the technology or art of possibility thereof, but also address some of the teething issues that any such adoption brings in. The third aspect, and I can't speak enough about it, is that, focusing on processes, people, and technology at the same time. Technology is just a means to the end, but processes and people are super critical to be focused on. And looking at, the larger organization change management, in an inclusive manner, I think those are the ways that Birlasoft engages with our customers' needs.
All the makings of a great partner. Ajit, this was a wonderful conversation and we've gone a little past the surface, but I'm sure there's a lot more to dig into. So please promise us you'll be back for another chat here on Tech Lyceum.
Anytime you want me, Nirja. Thank you so much.
So just to summarize Ajit's points, number one, there is no expert for generative AI as most organizations are still figuring out its applications. Number two, in order to have a better outcome, change management in an organization should be a focus. Also, integration of processes, people, and technology should be a priority. And finally, number three, the best investment to make is in your employees. Organizations must create awareness and make required trainings available to their employees. That's the takeaway from this episode. I hope you had a great time. I'll catch you on another one of these. Until then, it's bye-bye for now.
You were listening to Tech Lyceum, a podcast by Birlasoft.